All right, everybody. We're going to be starting in just a few moments. Just a few moments. I thank you for your patience in being here with me. I am just doing some background updates, making sure that everyone can see the live stream. And so just have just a few moments of patience with me here. And we'll be getting started in just a moment. All right. So, everyone, come on. Oh, great. So, I'm not sure if the music was playing. It should have been. Looks like my system's acting up yet again. Oh, what a joy. Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us. This is No Soundbites Allowed. I am your host, Michael Voss, Dragon of the Southern Tier, and I'm happy to be here with you today. It is December 10th. It is 3 days after the anniversary of December 7th, wherein which, 1941, the United States was attacked by Japan. We entered into World War II, something we should never forget. But that being said, there's a lot that's been going on. We're approaching the end of the year. There is so much to talk about, so much that is going on. We have 3 weeks left for the rest of the year. What is happening and how it is affecting you is the key thing that we do every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We reach out on all the social media that the internet overlords will allow and that we can afford to be able to hear your voices in live chat, occasionally with phone calls, to be able to have that conversation, because we believe in freedom of speech. It's not just an American principle. It is your right by birth anywhere in the world. Even if your government doesn't agree, even if the internet overlords don't like it, we're here to hear your voice. We're going to be talking about a lot of things. I don't know. It's been quite the interesting week for me. I don't know about for everyone else, but I had one hell of a time this week because, there's a lot of things that normally in any given week that we go through. Let me start off with some general housekeeping just to bring everyone up to date. Every so often I do a show. It's called Across the Pond with Alternative. A couple of brothers from the United Kingdom. They invite me to speak with them about all the issues from an American perspective about what's happening in the United Kingdom, what's happening in Europe, and around the rest of the world. So it's the questions from Europe and from the United Kingdom coming to an American and saying, hey, how do Americans see this? Because this is how they see it. So it's called Across the Pond. And the latest episode will be coming out this week. Hello, King of the Swamp. The audio is low. Thank you for letting me know. Let me try and adjust that for you right now. Let me ask you, did that make it better? Give me a thumbs up or some kind of indication. Did that improve the audio for you, King of the Swamp? We try and do a lot of things to try and improve the audio. Please let me know if it's come back better. So I was mentioning so that's an upcoming interview, an exclusive. I've done it with Alternative. It's quite interesting when you think about it, because when we've spoken with them in the past, just to give you guys an idea, and yes, I'm still dealing with the one monitor that I can really see, but let's see, there it is. So to give you an idea, what you're seeing on the screen right now is a clip from the last time we did it. We have the video clips, the shorts that we have done from my interviews with Alternative have gained well over 30,000 views each. We've seen tens of thousands of views, and yet YouTube suppresses the actual interview where we get dozens of people watching it instead of the tens of thousands that watch us. What you see on the screen right now is just one example. This is one of the shorts from the last time that I was speaking with Alternative. 16,000 people on YouTube alone watched this clip less than 24 people have actually seen the video it came from. Let me show you a little bit of what we talk about there. China will go and invade Taiwan about 2025, 2027. Japan has now decided that they're going to build an army. They're spending $325 billion to make an army within 5 years. South Korea is now going to become the 4th largest arms manufacturer in the world. Guam is militarizing. Iceland is militarizing. Poland is militarizing massively. I can't name a country in the world that is not militarizing. Iran is militarizing. They're making drones and they are sending those drones to Russia to use against Ukraine. Why? Because it hurts America in the West. We're seeing China militarizing. They're building the largest navy in the world as America is shrinking its navy. China's going to have the largest navy by 2027. It's going to double the size of the U.S. Navy. So that gives you just a slight idea of some of the things that we've talked about with alternative. And again, we have seen it, the suppression is incredible coming from YouTube and other social media sources. 16,000 people just saw what you just saw, a clip from me speaking with Across the Pond. And yet you can't find the actual video because it is so massively suppressed. We hope that this week you'll check out Alternative and see our latest video, which was recorded this week, and covers a lot of what's going on in the world at this time. And again, King, I'm just checking. I try and fix the audio a little bit. Please let me know if that has adjusted it, if it is better. Yeah, it is the mic settings. It is the mic settings. And I do a couple of different live streams throughout the week, so sometimes the settings get thrown off, and it could be the microphone itself. But, well, please let me know if that's not good. I try and provide the best quality I can for everyone watching the show. So please let me know if something's off. I will try and make it better for you so that you can see what's going on. Also, if I'm talking into the mic, I can't actually look at you guys just because of the way our temporary studios here in the Bronx are set up. But, you try and do the best that you can. So we wanted to talk a little bit about that. Let me also mention the insanity that this week has been. I don't know about you guys. My week has been crazy, in part because this week I got called a white supremacist. This is really interesting. I was called a baby-killing white supremacist this week. And the reason why is because I want the United States to defend and take care of American citizens. Because I prioritize my fellow American citizens, just like people in Great Britain, people in France, Germany, Angola, China, name the country, that government is there to protect its people. That's what governments do. That's their primary purpose. Take care of their people domestically and internationally. And I want the United States to do that as well, especially with the conflict with Israel and Hamas, where Hamas continues to have approximately 24 Americans that are held as hostages, human shields. They are torturing them. They are sexually abusing them. As we have finally, after 2 months, we are finally hearing Congress and many on the left to finally speak about the abuse of hostages, the sexual abuse of women, in this terrorist act from October 7th. We're just hearing about that. And my focus is I want American hostages returned. Every single one of them, alive. I want them to be as healthy as possible. That's my focus. And because I had that focus, because that is my priority, and that I am willing to fund Israel to get our hostages back and to remind the terrorists around the world, never take another American hostage. Don't kill Americans. Don't take us as hostages. Because that is my point of view, I was called a baby-killing white supremacist. Let me show you a clip from my conversation with Larry Sharp during the Sharp Crew lunchtime conversation we had this Thursday, and I want you to hear what's being said here.
only one baby was killed in the
How many
terrorist
babies
attack.
is too many? How many are you willing to allow?
6,000.
What's on the checklist?
6,000
Is it
Palestinian children have
Is it-
been murdered in the last 57 days. What about those children?
I'm concerned about them too.
Are you? Because it doesn't
But-
seem like you are.
No, I am, but I have a priority. I have a priority of Americans
Clearly.
versus other nations.
Clearly.
I'm
And it's
very
quite sad
clearly
because it
more
comes back
concerned
to
about
white
Americans.
supremacy.
I'm more concerned about Americans. I'm more concerned about Israelis.
Again,
I'm even
Me
concerned
too.
about the
brief part of the conversation that was being had there.
And I do invite you to check out for yourself the entire lunchtime conversation. It was 1 hour long. It's up on you can see it on Larry Sharp's channel. You can see it on my channel in the live stream from Thursday. It's incredible. Because I would dare. This is the status of the left. This is what PhDs, this is what the colleges are indoctrinating students with. If you dare to oppose their point of view, their feelings, if you dare to support protecting people in your own country, to denounce and to actively fight against terrorism in the world, terrorism that has targeted civilians and children, well, then you're the bad guy. Somehow, because I want to defend America and I want to have Americans returned home, that somehow makes you a white nationalist. Can you believe that? And that's coming from a PhD who teaches a college course. This is what the intelligentsia in America has devolved into. How dare you? How dare you not want to support the terrorists of Hamas over American citizens' lives, over the hostages that are being used as human shields and tortured every day? This is incredible to me. King of the Swamp says, that reminds me of that Dave Chappelle episode where a blind black man is a Klansman and he doesn't know he's black. Yes, I do know that character. I remember that skit by Dave Chappelle. It was really, really funny. Yeah, but it's kind of the same thing here. How dare you? See, they have the blinders on. You can't say something they haven't approved if you're talking about the progressives, the left, if you're talking about the colleges and many of the institutions under the Biden-Harris administration. If you don't believe what they tell you to believe, then you're the bad guy. Somehow saying my priority is to get Americans back to protect women and children, well, that makes me a white nationalist. That makes me a baby killer. Does that make sense to anyone? For those who are on the left who watch this program, whether you're a libertarian, whether you're a progressive, a Democrat, I don't care. Everyone's welcome on this channel, but please explain to me, how is it trying to protect my fellow American is somehow equal to baby killing and white nationalism? It doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense. What kind of nationalism when Thailand, the prime minister of the government of Thailand, got back almost all of their people? Was that nationalism too? Was that some kind of racism because they wanted their people to come back home safe? It doesn't make any sense. Mike Bowie mentions he doesn't have the stomach to listen to the BS from the liberal point of view anymore. Well, they're Americans too. And I'm willing to hear them because, like a broken clock, everything can be right. John Fetterman, what was it, a week and a half ago, came out and talked about Bob Menendez, that if we're going to expel someone like George Santos, who has not committed a crime simply because he wasn't approved by the establishment in both the Republican and Democrat parties, then we have to remove people who've actually committed crimes, who have actually made violations of the ethics of Congress, like Bob Menendez of New Jersey. We have to expel them. What about what about Adam Schiff, who lied to the American people's face for years and still has never apologized for it, saying that he had proof of Russia collusion, that 3, maybe 4 separate investigations lasting 3 years, costing $35 million of taxpayer money, your money out your pocket, not one of those investigations, including 2 by Democrats, could find any evidence. It didn't exist. Adam Schiff never presented it. Even as he was holding impeachment proceedings, Adam Schiff never provided the American people the proof that he went on nightly to tell Rachel Maddow, to tell her every night that, oh, he's got this proof. Russia collusion was real. Where's your evidence? Where is the evidence that you promised you had that guaranteed this and guaranteed that President Trump would be impeached and removed from office? Where is that evidence? It has now been 6, 7 years. We still don't have it because it doesn't exist. And so that's what happens when you hear this. Why does the left do this? Why do progressives and the left demonize people in this way? Well, one, it's supposed to make you shut up. Oh, I was called a baby killer. I was called a white nationalist for some reason. Well, then, okay, then I have to shut up. I just have to say, well, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for that. I didn't mean to. No, screw you. I have priorities. I have a reason. My reasoning is sound. It makes sense. There is a purpose for it, and it has nothing to do with the color of anyone's skin. It has a lot to do with their actions and their politics. So this is kind of what I went through this week, and we saw this in our news media throughout the week, and we're going to talk a little bit about that in the show as we go on when we start talking about the colleges at Harvard, MIT, University of Pennsylvania. And trust me, it's not just those 3. Remember, we've been talking about it for a while. Cooper Union here in New York City. What about the University of Cornell with their student that admitted that they were a member of Hamas? What about their professor, Rickford, who had to take a sabbatical, had to disappear from the public eye because he was exhilarated because of the terrorist murder of civilians, thousands of civilians murdered, tortured, and used as human shields. So these are all critical factors. We need to understand. This is what happens. Your channel will be suppressed. Your voice will be ostracized. You will be demonized at every single turn. Whether it makes any logical sense at all doesn't matter. Doesn't have to be logical. It doesn't have to be factual. We heard this from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She told you the era that we are now entering into, that we are seeing in these colleges, that we are seeing influence American politics and your life. It is the era of feelings. The feelings of a handful of elites, and generally progressives and socialists, their feelings count more than you because you, due to their view of equity, you're not a human being. You're not an individual. You are a collection of categories that they have evaluated and ranked arbitrarily without ever telling you about it, without any influence from you. And you're just these collection of categories. And so you have to submit to their feelings and their priorities, no matter what yours may be, because you're not human. You don't count. That is the evil underbelly of equity. That's the evil underbelly of socialism and progressivism. That you cease to be a human being. You cease to be an individual. You cease to have rights and choices. You are essentially a slave. Mike Bowie says, I'm stuck in by the contrast of this hostage crisis with the Iranian crisis in 1979. Well, I'm old enough to have been alive during the Carter administration, which is what you're referencing there, Mike, for people to check that out. And in that situation, when the Ayatollah of Iran rose up with his religious revolt, took over Iran, kicked out the Shah, and captured 400 Americans who were in an embassy, just captured them and held them hostage. Well, the reason why you're seeing so many similarities between that and what's happening with Hamas, the Iranian President Raisi, who's in right now, was part of that revolution in the 1980s, 79 and 80. He was part of taking the hostages, American embassy workers, and holding them hostage for over a year. So that's part of the reason why you see so many similarities. And again, what did we see? The reason why it happened is we had a weak president, Jimmy Carter. Not to say that he's a bad man. He was a weak president with horrible, horrendous international policy, with an international policy that was absolutely horrendous, and he was not respected around the world, and they took full advantage of it. And he failed to get the Americans home. Mind you, I will give him credit that he tried. He sent in Delta Force to try and get the American hostages, and we had a helicopter crash in the middle of the desert, and he failed. Said, oh, that's it. We're over. It's done. He failed, and he was skewered by the American news media and the American people for that failure. People who are alive today may not recall that because you weren't alive then. I was. He was skewered, said that he was afraid of, Jimmy Carter was afraid of rabbits. He was so terrified and timid and was unwilling to save American hostages. We have the same situation today with Joe Biden, Kamala Harris. They're same thing. They're terrified of getting American hostages back. They're willing to buy them back, but they're not willing to actually go in and try and get our people. Why? Because they're afraid that a bunch of leftist, progressive teachers, academics, are going to go onto Twitter or onto Facebook or onto YouTube and say, well, you're supporting white supremacy. By the way, it doesn't apply. We're talking about the Middle East. We're talking about Israelis, Palestinians. We're talking about Americans. We're talking about people from Nepal, from Thailand, from the United Kingdom. No, this doesn't apply. And by the way, the United Kingdom's done a miserable job as well. They have somewhere around 17 of the United Kingdom, the British people, are currently being used as human shields and have not been returned. Rishi Sunak has failed the British people in getting them released from Hamas. Just as Joe Biden has failed, yes, he got one child. Yes, he got one teenage girl. That's fantastic. That's 2. There were 22 others that are being held. What about them? The American news media won't talk about it. But we've talked a lot about that over the last 2 months on this channel. Let me go on. I just wanted to let you know the kind of week I was having where I'm being called a white supremacist and my channel is being suppressed for daring to say I care about Americans. That my priority as an American is my fellow American. How dare I have a priority? How dare I have my priorities be the American people? This is what's being taught to our kids in colleges. This is the next generation of America. Our next set of political leaders, business leaders, they're being taught Americans are not their fellow American is not a priority. And you think that's not going to affect the world? Because you're having that same influence go out to the United Kingdom, to France, to Germany, to the first world nations of the world, the second world nations of the world. It's going to have a massive impact. And since we're talking about these wonderful, kind people in Hamas, these wonderful, put upon people who have no ability, they're just being they're being put upon and they're oppressed and it's not their fault. They're innocent. Well, according to the Hindustan Times, credible international news media, we now have reports today that Hamas, it is alleged Hamas, all that humanitarian aid, the hundreds of millions of dollars that the Biden-Harris administration has given to Hamas and is now trying to give even more to Hamas, your tax money, to help the people of Palestine, the people in Gaza, to be able to have food and water. What happens to those people? Well, according to the Hindustan Times and according to the visuals, the evidence we have in video, well, what happened is Hamas is stealing food. Hamas is stealing water. Hamas is stealing the humanitarian aid. So let me be clear about that. This is being reported internationally. Hamas is going around, and we've said this on this channel. We knew this was going to happen. We knew this was coming. We warned you about this. We said, this is historically accurate. We've seen this over and over again. When humanitarian aid is given to Gaza and the West Bank, Hamas, Hezbollah, the radical, fanatical terrorists take the food, they take the water, they take the fuel away from the people and let their own people starve and die so that they can continue to fight Israel because they believe in genocide. That is a fact. You can look up the Yale 1988 comments, the actual structure of Hamas as written by Hamas, 1988, where they say they will commit complete genocide and they will never stop fighting. This is why they take the resources from their own people. Well, of course, the United States, Israel, Great Britain, Europe, we're all blamed for it. It's everyone else's fault. Meanwhile, Hamas is taking the food out of their own people's mouths so that they can go and fight a war of genocide to increase the amount of terror in the world. And the only person who's happy about this is Iran. But you're not supposed to see that video. You're not supposed to pay attention to the Hindustan Times. You're not seeing this reported in the United States. This isn't headline news on CNN or MSNBC or ABC News or the New York Times. They don't want to talk about this. You have to go to the international news media and pay attention. And most Americans don't even know what publications exist internationally. They don't see this, but it is affecting you. And it's terrifying. It is terrifying. So those same college professors that are telling you they're pro-Hamas, they're telling you that you're supposed to support Hamas, you're supposed to support genocide and terrorism because, oh, those put upon members of Hamas, how sad. Yeah, they're stealing people's food. They're letting their own people starve and freeze and die. Oh, but the college professors didn't mention that. They didn't show you that video. They didn't tell you that there is evidence that seems to suggest Hamas is more than willing to kill their own people through starvation and deprivation rather than allow them to be fed, no matter how much humanitarian aid is being put in, which is one of the reasons why I say we don't need to give more humanitarian aid to Hamas. Please, don't do this. We don't need to give them anything. You want to give humanitarian aid to Hamas, to Gaza, to the West Bank? Fantastic. Tell Hamas and have Hamas release all of the hostages and human shields. See, the United States this week, on Friday, there was a... give me 1 second. I want to show you this. There was a vote in the UN this weekend, on Friday, for the United States and the world. And where is it? There it is. There it is. I want to show you guys this because I don't need to make anything up. I give you the evidence. I give you the sources so that you can see this for yourself. And the description of every one of the links and everything we're talking about, the links are in the description for everything that we're talking about, so you can see this for yourself. But the world leaders, we're seeing Turkey, we're seeing the Middle East countries who do not want any of the Palestinians. They don't want these people. They don't want to have any of the refugees from Palestine or from Gaza or the West Bank. They don't want them in their countries. They don't want these people. They don't want to help these people. They want the Palestinians to go to Europe. They want them to go to the United Kingdom. They want them to go to the United States. They don't want them in the Middle East. They don't want them in Lebanon or Jordan or Egypt, the countries surrounding Israel that could absolutely start helping them tomorrow. They don't want those refugees. They want them to go to Europe and the United Kingdom and to America. Okay. And they're upset with America because we said we don't support a one-sided ceasefire. This is the pressure coming from the UN, the pressure that's coming from the Middle East. Israel has to stop fighting. Israel didn't start this fight. Israel is the victim. And just because Israel is better at fighting the war that was started by Hamas and Iran doesn't mean that they're suddenly the bad guys. Now, you may dispute and say, Mike, well, they overkill. They've gone overboard. Maybe. Then again, they have an existential threat. They were promised by Hamas, who have not disappeared, who have not gone away. They have been promised by Iran for decades that these people will kill them, every man, woman, and child. So it's kind of hard to say that it's an overreaction when people are saying, stop shooting the people who want to kill you, the people who are, in fact, killing your civilians just because they exist. It's kind of hard to say that's an overreaction. It really is. When you step back and think about it for a second, it's really hard. But the United States is now being threatened. We are now being threatened not just by the Middle East, in particular Iran, and demonized because we dared to say we won't vote for a ceasefire that only affects Israel. Hamas needs to release the hostages. Hamas needs to stop the fighting. They need to give up this idea of genocide because they don't care about freedom. Really, they don't. Their purpose is genocide, not equality. Because they have been offered the two-state solution, which has been offered by Israel multiple times over a decade, for actually since the 1970s. It's been offered to them, and the answer from the radicals are, no, we want you dead. They don't want to live with Israel. They don't want more rights from Israel. They want Israel dead. They want America dead. They want Europe dead. That's their goal. Not equality, not the opportunity. They just want people dead. You can't have a ceasefire with that. You really can't. I understand the Pollyanna view that says, well, no, we should all be able to live together in hugs and it'll all be great. That's not reality. You can't ceasefire. You can't have a ceasefire in a war where only one side stops trying to fight. So there's a comment from Mike Bowie who says, I'm wondering now, why would anyone organize a music festival so close to the Gaza border? Well, that's a fair question. But if you believe the border is secure, why would you worry about it? Think about, as a great example, look at the United States. We know that the cartels in Mexico are running rampant. They kill police officers and civilians on a regular basis. There are how many murders that happened in Tijuana every day? And we see this throughout the entire southern border. But yet we have cities and towns right across the American border, 5 miles away? Or cities like Del Rio, which is on the border itself. How many of these do we have? Yet there is rampant violence, there is rampant corruption and illegality, these gangs, these corrupt individuals all across Mexico, right on the border, committing these murders actively, regularly, on the border, on the Mexican side. But America still has cities and movies and parks and schools. What is it? Lukeville, Arizona. They have students. The United States government, last week we were talking about this. The United States government shut down the border to commercial business, to students in Mexico going to school in Lukeville, Arizona, so that the United States government could allow more illegal aliens to enter the United States. That's a fact. That's happening right now. But no one's talking about, what about the criminal organizations in Mexico just on the other side of Blueville. The criminal organizations that are using those illegal immigrants now being pushed through into America at an even faster rate, that are drug mules, that are sex slaves, that are slaves in general. What about all that? Oh, well, we're not talking about that. So that's part of the reason why were they having a music festival somewhat near the border with Gaza? Because no one was expecting to be genocided. That no one expected them to break through and try and just randomly kill civilians. Dal is with us. Hello, Dal. And Dal says, retaliation by Israel was always going to have poorly received optics. Of course. Pretty much any meaningful response to protect themselves is going to look and feel like overkill. Of course, and I agree with you. And the United States being involved is also going to look like overkill. But again, we didn't pick this fight. We didn't give them our citizens to be held as hostages and to be tortured. And anyone who does not, and the reason why I keep saying that is because the rest of the news media won't say it, because they don't want you to think about that aspect. That's why you don't hear about the American hostages. We got 2 hostages back during the ceasefire. How many remain? When was the last time you saw an article in the mainstream news media where you saw any of the anchors of the nightly news, no matter what channel you're looking at, actually talk about, by the way, here's the number of American hostages remaining as human shields with Hamas? You don't. They don't talk about that. They don't talk about how many Brits, how many of the British are hostages in human shields. They don't talk about that. It's not part of the conversation because it would change the way you look at the response by the United States, and you wouldn't necessarily think that the Biden-Harris administration has done a good job, which means you might vote differently in 2024. And please, folks, don't fool yourselves. We are in the middle of the fortification of the 2024 election. We are deep into the propaganda wave of the left-leaning news media that went to Harvard, that went to Yale, that went to the University of Pennsylvania and Cornell University, that are deeply entrenched in our news media system. They are protecting themselves and they're trying to promote their ideology, even though it doesn't make any sense. And that's why we're seeing the way that they are talking about these things. We'll show you in a little bit, in talking about American politics, 3 different news stories, all on the same exact subject, and you will see the way that it is being worded to try, and you'll see it from the left to the right and in the center. We will show you 3 articles, all on the same subject, and how it has been engineered. It's about gun control, and they're going to tell you about New York City gun control, and you'll see the way that the left is trying to change the subject as opposed to actually dealing with the issue at hand. But we will get to that. By the way, don't think that Iran, who I keep mentioning, and I keep mentioning Iran because they are deeply involved in this entire process. Again, going to international news media, because the American news media doesn't really like to talk about the fact that as we speak, Iran is actively attacking the United States. We now have more of the Iran-backed fanatical terrorists are attacking U.S. troops in Iraq, in Syria. We have the Houthi rebels that are attacking. We have Hezbollah that's attacking. And America is deeply involved in this. People who say, well, we have to be careful. America shouldn't be involved. We're already involved. We've always been involved. And we are actively being attacked. Iran has already promised, Hezbollah has already promised that they are going to come after Americans, both internationally and domestically, because our people were killed, and because our people are hostages, they're going to attack us. Why? Because we didn't do what they said. Because we're not condemning Israel, we're trying to get back our people. How dare we do that? No, no, no. The answer is supposed to be comply to Iran. Obey the Ayatollah Ayatollah of Iran. Obey him. Listen to their version of Islam. Do what they say. How dare we do anything else? And because we dare to not comply, well, then they're attacking us. And if you think they're only going to attack us in Iraq, that they're only going to continue to attack us in Syria, that they're only going to attack us in Israel, if you think it's not coming to Europe, if you think they're not going to go to the United Kingdom or to the United States with our open borders, think about this. They have promised that they are going to kill Americans domestically as well as internationally. We have an open border. New York City is going bankrupt as they continue to say, let in more illegal aliens. Lukeville, Arizona, they are closing down commercial business. They are hurting the economy of the United States to allow in more illegal aliens. All across in every zone and area that the progressive left have influence, they are opening up the doors. Look at California, letting in more illegal aliens without vetting them, without any knowledge who these people are. They're just letting them in. It is the open border. This is why they welded the gates on the Trump wall. They welded it open to just let anyone enter the United States. Combine that with the fact that Iran, which is currently attacking the United States, promised to attack Americans on domestic soil. We know that, as we have reported and has been reported by the Department of Justice, the Department of State, we know for a fact Homeland Security have all stated that there are somewhere around 169 known terrorists, known or suspected terrorists, in the United States this year, right this second. 169. How many did it take to make 9/11? How many did it take for the attack in San Bernardino? How many did it take for Fort Hood or for Boulder, Colorado, or the Orlando nightclub? How many of these fanatical individuals does it take to kill dozens of people? And we have open borders. We have 8 million people who have come in to America, a record under the Biden administration so far. And there is nothing that looks like it's going to stem that tide. There is nothing stopping even more illegal aliens coming into Boston, into Chicago, into New York, into California, into Lukeville, Arizona. There's nothing stopping that. And you're told that if you even want to consider slowing down the number of illegal aliens coming into America, you're the bad guy. You're the problem, they keep telling you. This is what we hear from these colleges, from these institutions, from the Squad, from the Democratic Socialists of America, from progressive leaders of tomorrow. This is what we hear from the left. You're the bad guy. Yes, we have a known threat that said they want to kill you. And they're saying, open the doors. Don't even look. Let them all in. If you dare to say, yeah, but maybe some of them are terrorists, maybe some of them are sent from Iran or some other terrorist organization like Hezbollah or Hamas or the Houthis, and they're being sent into the United States to kill American citizens, whether they're Jewish or they're Hindu or they're Christian, doesn't really matter. Doesn't matter what the color of the skin they are. Maybe because they're LGB. Doesn't matter. They're maybe being sent in. Shouldn't we be concerned about that? And the left will tell you, oh my God, you're so evil. How dare you think of that? This is the insanity that we are facing in 2023 going into 2024. This is the absolute levels of insanity that are affecting our world. And this is why global stability is down, why peace in the world is down, why we are seeing every nation in the world militarize and have been militarizing for well over a year. They're all getting more militant. Why? Because it's all falling apart, because we have no leadership with no plan. And far too many people are saying, oh, but my college, my teacher, I was told, they're the good guys. We're the bad guys for defending ourselves. It reminds me how in New York State, it is illegal. In New York State, it is illegal for you to own body armor, to have a bulletproof vest. Passive self-defense. It is a crime to passively defend yourself in New York State. I want you to let that sink in. That's the level of what we are seeing right now. If you dare to protect yourself individually, passively, you are a criminal. You're supposed to be at risk, and you're supposed to be dependent on the government to protect you if the government thinks you're worth being protected. Based on your equity score, based on your characteristics and categories, the government will decide if you are worth protecting. And if you're not, well, then you just risk greater levels of crime and harm. That's just crazy. Again, if any politician disagrees with me, if anyone on the left disagrees with me, libertarians, conservatives, Republicans, anyone disagrees, I am more than happy to hear your voice. I am more than happy to talk with you about this. Show me, if you think I am wrong, where is your evidence? I am giving you lots of evidence that what we are being told isn't working. What we have been promised isn't working. That this indoctrination is making us weaker and causing worse problems year after year after year. The longer we go down this path, the worse it is for the world. I'm showing you evidence. I've been showing evidence of these things for years. Where's the evidence saying that I'm wrong? Because the answer I normally get is like what we showed you earlier in the conversation during the Thursday at lunchtime. The answer was, oh, Mike, you're a baby-killing white supremacist. Where do you get that from? But that is the left. That is what the left says. And that's why this channel is so heavily suppressed. By the way, if you've made it this far into the channel, we thank you and we appreciate it. And we only ask you, please like, share, subscribe. Help us with the algorithm. Help us to get to 5,000. That's it. 5,000 subscribers. That's all we want to do. Get to 5,000 subscribers. Maybe if you want, you can join our Patreon or you can make a donation on PayPal. That's up to you. I understand the economy is horrible. We're in a recession since August of 2022, as we detailed on this channel already. I get that, but you don't have to donate anything. All we ask is like, share, subscribe. To hear our voice, to hear this point of view, to see the sources that we are looking at every week to try and provide for you. Whether you agree or not, that's your choice. We're not progressives. We don't mandate that you have to agree with us because of the color of our skin. We want you to make your own mind up because you're not a category. You're an individual. You're a human being. And we treat you with the respect of being a human being, whether you agree or disagree. Ed is with us. Ed Z says, it's been New York policy for some time that you cannot defend yourself as you are expected to flee. Tell that to the elderly, crippled, or those attacked by gangs. Well, how far can you flee? That's the thing. Oh, I'm going to flee. Where? You're going to go to California? You're going to flee into Canada? You're going to flee into Mexico? Where are you fleeing to? Because once you start running, when do you stop? Because if you do stop, you then have to confront the problem. See, again, they don't want you to think about that. You're not supposed to think it through. If I'm running away, eventually I have to stop running. And when I stop running, I still have the same problem that I started with, maybe even worse. When New York State and the country are saying you don't have a right to passively defend yourself, they are, in fact, de facto saying you're not a human being. Because it is a understood fact of the world. Human beings have a right to defend themselves. Even the worst of the worst nations in, well, other than Iran, the rest of the Middle East, the rest of the world, we all agree Israel has a right to defend itself. Whether you think they have gone beyond that or not, whether it's overkill in their defense, that's a different argument. That's a different conversation. That's the magnitude of defense that they are putting forth. We can have that conversation and intelligently try to come to an answer and say, well, this is reasonable or not reasonable. That's a different thing than they innately, absolutely have a right to defend themselves, as do every American, overseas and at home. But if you are listening to the progressive left, as an example with New York State, you don't have that right. You do not have the innate right that belongs to human beings to defend yourself, especially passively, as in the example of a bulletproof vest. The only reason they would deny that is because you aren't a human being. Now, the answer that you will get, by the way, to address this, and I know someone will say, but Mike, you're not giving the right argument. That's not the reason why. The argument from the left, from progressives, is the existence of bulletproof vests equal crime. Because someone has a bulletproof vest, they will go out and commit crime. Criminals will get the vest and they will commit more crime. Mind you, there is no data that supports that argument. There is no data. There is nothing that says, oh, well, we are seeing more criminals wear bulletproof vests and then they're going out to commit more crime. There is no evidence of that. Not one study. Doesn't exist. That is an argument made up in the minds of progressives to try and justify why they are denying people the ability to defend themselves. And if you stop and think about that, then you suddenly go, because again, you're not supposed to think about this, you're supposed to feel. And they're using fear as a motivator rather than fact, because they don't have any facts. There is no evidence that backs up their point of view. So they only have the emotion, and the emotion says, be afraid. Criminals are going to do this. We know it. Criminals are going to go out and do this, and they're going to be more dangerous. And that means you're going to be more in trouble. Then why haven't they done it before? Why aren't they doing it now? Criminals are not, by definition, law-abiding. They don't care if it's illegal to have a bulletproof vest. Criminals, if they truly wanted to do this horror story that's been envisioned by the left, if it were truly their goal and this was a major support for crime, then we would see more and more criminals being arrested in New York State with bulletproof vests that they got illegally, because you can still get bulletproof vests out of Canada, out of Mexico. You can go to Kansas, you can go to Iowa, you can go to almost every single state in the nation that isn't run by a progressive, and you can still get a bulletproof vest. If they wanted to get the vest illegally, they could. And they are criminals. They do things illegally. Therefore, we should see more criminals arrested with bulletproof vests. We don't. So their reasoning isn't to stop criminals. It is to stop the public. It is to punish the law-abiding citizen and to put so much fear into them that they will comply, that you will obey without question, without thinking about it. This isn't about your safety. This is about your obedience. And if there is anyone on the left that would like to argue this, if there is anyone who wants to support New York State in this idea, I am more than happy. Any of the anti-Second Amendment people, any one of the people who believe that guns, an inanimate object, is inherently evil, I will be happy to have this discussion. I've done it in colleges already. I've spoken at colleges and I've been the featured speaker at many events. I will be happy to continue to do this, to speak with you about it, and let's go through this conversation. Let's have this debate, because right now, they're not. They're telling you just to obey, don't think, don't ask questions, and don't follow this path. It is about the fact that you are not human. Humans have a right to defend themselves. To passively defend yourself is innately a positive for every human being. If you can't do that, you're not human. Therefore, you have no rights. Therefore, you must obey. You are a slave, you are a non-human, and you have no rights. That is what is at the core of what New York State has done. Does anyone disagree with me on that? Let's see. Gal says there's no data or studies about criminals, gangs, even terrorists using more and more bulletproof vests. There is no data on this. Just the emotional appeal to fear that criminals will get body armor and will be harder for law enforcement to protect you. Mind you, there's less law enforcement as well. In the same breath, they say, damn the police officers. Right. Jason said, hey, Jason, haven't heard from you in a little while. Hope the family is doing well. Jason says, does the law about bulletproof vests define what constitutes bulletproof? Yes, they actually do. This was about 2 years ago, that the law was passed. And yes, they did go into what is a bulletproof vest. I actually covered it at the time, and I'm pretty sure if you do a search on YouTube or on Rumble, I think I put it under body armor. It might be under bulletproof vest in the title or in the description. And I actually have a link to the actual bill, its actual wording, and who actually voted for it, and what was the argument at that time. So you can search for it and you'll be able to find it in greater detail. Mike Bowie mentions that police are allowed to wear bulletproof vests. Yes, because they are law enforcement. They are under the beck and call of the elites. And so, again, they're human beings. You're not. Ed says, it comes down to self-preservation, and that's something New York doesn't believe in. I agree with you. They do not believe you should preserve yourself because you're not a human being. So defend yourself at all costs because New York isn't going to do it for you. Well, not only is not New York going to do it for you, the Biden-Harris administration isn't doing it for you. We're not seeing this across this country. Think about it. The same ideology, you're not human, because humans have the right to defend themselves. The Biden administration isn't going to protect. There's 30,000 Americans that have been abandoned. 5,000 in Afghanistan, 10,000 in the Ukraine, 15,000 in the Sudan. That's 30,000 before you ever mention Israel or Hamas. 30,000. That started from September 1st of 2021, counting until today. Think about that. The news media does not want to talk about this. They do not want you to think about this. They don't want to have this conversation. You should. They don't care about you. They're not human. They do not value you, the American citizen, or anyone in the world as human beings. If they did, they would have to have a very, very different reaction. And it's only because Israel is a place that most people in America have heard of. Most people have some idea of where it is in the world because it's our only ally in the Middle East, because it is the only democracy and stable nation in the Middle East. Then that's why we hear about this. But if it weren't for those factors, you would be hearing the same amount of information about the Americans being tortured and taken as human shields by Hamas as you do about the Americans, 15,000 of them, in the Sudan at this moment trying to avoid a genocide, literally a genocide, and a clash of the warlords in the Sudan. Which, by the way, the last time that the news media was talking about that, the national U.S. news media, the last time they talked about the Sudan was May 3rd. You can search for it yourself. There has been no conversation about Americans into Sudan since May 3rd of 2023. Those Americans were abandoned April of 2023. What's going on? You had 2 weeks of news, and now they don't talk about them. Just like they don't talk about Afghanistan or Ukraine. They don't talk about these people. And by the way, they don't talk about the hostages, American hostages, or the Americans killed by Hamas. You don't hear that conversation anymore. No one mentions that there were over at least 33 Americans killed by Hamas. You don't hear about that. We went to war over this. That was the whole point in 9/11. You killed Americans. We won. The United States was willing. For those who are not alive at that time, if you're under the age of about 25, maybe 30, you probably don't understand. When the United States was attacked on 9/11, the immediate response from the nation was to drop nukes on any country that contained the people that had committed 9/11. It wasn't even about, oh, well, we want to take out Hamas, or we want to take out Al-Qaeda, or we want to take out any terrorist organization. It was the common view of Americans at that time, 9/11, September 11th, was to nuke, to glass any nation that had even a tangential connection to the murder of over 3,000 Americans. That's our reaction. And now, today, that's because they attacked American citizens and killed them, innocent civilians, not military targets, innocent civilians going about their daily lives. Here we have 33 Americans were killed. We are actively told that at somewhere around 22 Americans are being sexually abused every day. You woke up today, they were being sexually abused. You went to sleep today, they're being sexually abused. You're watching a football game, they're being sexually abused. You're watching the housewives of whatever the hell, they're being sexually abused right now. And you're not supposed to have any reaction to that. In a nation that was willing to nuke a country for doing the very same thing. We were going to nuke Pakistan because we thought Osama bin Laden was possibly in a cave in Pakistan. Literally, there were conversations, high-level government conversations about strategic tactical nuclear weapons and or conventional weapons, because Osama might be in a cave in Pakistan. And you're telling me that something isn't wrong when we won't even mention 30,000 Americans, let alone at least 24 being tortured daily? Something's wrong. Okay. But instead, because I'm talking about this, I was told I'm the bad guy. Remember, this lunchtime, I got told by a French-trained progressive PhD teacher, said, Mike, you're just the bad guy. You're the problem. I'm the problem. Because I have a problem with American women being tortured 24 hours a day for the last 2 months. Okay. So going on with some of the comments. If a baby isn't a human being, why should anyone that is non-compliant adults be so? Don't all humans agree with each other if they were truly human? Well, no, human beings don't have to agree with each other if we're truly human, but we do agree that we have a right to defend ourselves, and for those who are defenseless, like a baby, they should have the ultimate defense because they are defenseless. Dow goes on to say, this is where regressive leftists get sold on the idea of collectivist collectivist thinking. Well, yeah, they're not thinking. Oh, someone else came up with this idea. I agree. That's collectivist thinking. Collectivist thinking is everyone agrees because somebody, an elite, said this is the right answer, and you do not have more thought on it. It's a cult. It's cultist thinking, where everyone agrees because the elite said this is what it is. There's really no difference between Jim Jones or the Democratic Socialists of America. They're the same thing. They're cultists. Jason says, you can request that your profession you're in be added to the list of eligibility to use a vest. That would be a fun argument. The government should not restrict me from passive self-defense, period. It's part of my second, I believe it's an offshoot of the Second Amendment. And that's part of the reason why New York said, no, it's part of their anti-Second Amendment viewpoint that you don't get to defend yourself. But I think it's part of the self-defense that I should have the right. I don't need to ask the government to say, well, my profession is an exception. I'm a human being. If I want it, I get it. If I don't want it, I don't get it. It's not for the government to be involved in that process at all. And trust me, we're going to be talking about the Second Court, the United States Second Court of Appeals, talking about gun control in New York and how that's going to affect the rest of the nation a little bit later in the program, because this is the same argument about your rights as an individual, what the government can and cannot ask of you, and how they get to be involved in the process. The government doesn't get to micromanage your life, not in terms of its defense, nor in terms of how you express it. Hey, hot chicks, good to see that you're here with us, and I appreciate that. Thank you very much. So, we can see how I'm just losing my mind here. This is crazy stuff when we start thinking about it. But we also got to understand it's not just the fact, and give me a second here as I'm trying to bring this up for you guys. So it's not just what's happening in the Middle East. I mean, that has captured everyone's attention at this point. Everyone's talking about Israel and Hamas. They're not talking about Iran or the Houthi rebels. We're not really having that conversation. So really, it's a bastardized conversation as is. But we're having less and less of a conversation of what was previously the hottest thing in the news, which of course was the Ukraine fighting Russia. Here's the thing that we should really be paying attention to in this. Russia, which is working with Iran, which is working with North Korea and China, they're working together against the United States. They have one goal: take down the United States and then Europe. That's their two goals, their two main goals, to give themselves more power. They have been conducting the first step of what I believe is 3 simultaneous regional wars. And I believe history is going to prove me correct on this, that we're going to see it in Western Europe, in the Middle East, and Southeast Asia. And I believe Southeast Asia is in the logistics phase, which will end somewhere in 2027, 2028. In that time frame, we're going to see China go out of the logistics phase and into an active onslaught, starting with Taiwan. We have the Middle East, which is constantly a powder keg, and that isn't going to end anytime soon. I don't care what happens next. None of this will end because Israel will continue to exist. So that's a war that's going to continue, and it will flare up over and over again. But Iran is reaching even further than just Israel. Their influence, especially their the support of terrorist organizations, reaches into Europe and into the United States, and we will see that magnify. We are seeing in Europe, well, Europe with the Ukraine is the first step, many believe, that Russia will go into, once they've taken over or taken enough of the Ukraine, then they would go to the pre-Baltics. That would be Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. That they would go into those nations, giving it access to both the Baltic Sea as well as the Black Sea, which gives it access to the Mediterranean. This way, you would see an expansion of the ability of Russia to reach the oceans that it does not have now. Plus, it gives it a buffer from Europe and the European allies from being able to attack Russia directly, as it had under the Soviet Union. It allows it to have more resources as well, and it also makes it harder for any economic policy to impact them. Remember, the sanctions that have been suggested by the Biden-Harris administration have failed. They have failed. News media stopped talking about them. The reason why you don't hear about the sanctions against Russia anymore, they failed. They don't work. It is an abject, humiliating failure. It was a stupid idea to start with. It didn't have a hope in hell to work, and we have proven it didn't work. In fact, the only thing that the sanctions really have done is to give more of a reason for Russia to work with and collude with Iran and China. Because of the trade, the natural ability of trade, the resources that each of those nations needed, they're now working more in collusion and more actively, even though they all hate each other. Iran, China, Russia, North Korea, they all hate each other. They have no love for each other. They would love to see each and every one of them dead, except they want America and Europe dead first. So they're willing to work together against us. Sanctions failed. Sanctions have fortified those individuals, and thus, when we look at the Ukraine, the other thing that they have done is they have been able to accurately detail, oh, we're not ready for war. The United States, Europe, the United Kingdom, we're not ready for war. We can't sustain ourselves. Our commander-in-chief has failed because we have failed to recognize how to be prepared. In this article, a Ukrainian soldier says that they stopped shelling small Russian units because they don't have any ammo. The United States, Europe, have run out of ammo. They cannot keep supplying the Ukraine to fight against Russia. This is a small conflict. I want you to understand, this isn't like the size of World War II. We have seen very clearly that there is not enough ammunition being produced by Europe or the United Kingdom and the United States combined to sustain a conflict with roughly 2 million soldiers on each side, 4 million soldiers on each side. Do you know how many people are in Europe? This is a small conflict. I know a lot of people say, but it's a war and it's big, and it's a small conflict. We're talking about an entire country, 2 million fighters. It's a small conflict, and we've already, months ago, ran out of weapons. This conflict, what we're seeing, and I think I have it quoted here, I believe it's here, in that part. What we are seeing is that Europe, America, not prepared. They have not prepared. They have been so used to making things just as they need it that we don't have a stockpile, a proper stockpile, a stockpile that would, what's the word I'm looking for? Intimidate an enemy, that would give them pause. They know, oh, if something the size of the Ukraine has drained all the weapons, imagine if Russia goes into Poland. Imagine if they go into Germany. Imagine if Iran goes into Saudi Arabia, if they go into Israel actively. Imagine that China goes into Japan or into South Korea or into the Philippines, where these are all hot areas where there are massive political, if not actual, conflicts. I mean, China could go after India. And they know there's no weapons left. There's no bullets left. Think about that. They have Russia, because of the bad planning of the United States, because of the lack of threat from Joe Biden, the lack of planning by Joe Biden, the lack of unity of the EU, the European Union, the really jellyfish type of response from Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak in the United Kingdom, this combination of failure from the left and those who lean left, this failure has enabled Russia and China and Iran to be able to move forward. And they know all we have to do, takes 2 years, and they're out of bullets. You can't fight a war against a tank when you have no bullets. You have no bombs. You have no mortar shells. You are running dry. What's the fight back? You're going to pick up a pitchfork and a sword? What do you think? You're the Soviet Georgians in 91? It doesn't work. You're going to lose. It's just that simple. We had World War II proved that to us. The end of World War I proved that to us. You can have a horse. You can be on a horse with a sword, and you will lose to a tank. And they now know we've got tanks with no bullets. We've got mortar shells and mortars and artillery with no weapons and with no shells. We have nothing of substance. We can show a lot of stuff. We have no substance. We've already used it up. And that should terrify you. Because China promised they're going to take over Taiwan by force. That's semiconductors. That's everyone with your iPhones and your lattes and your smartphones and your smart cars. That's Taiwan. And China's going to take it. And if they take it, we don't have the bullets to fight them, to help Japan or South Korea to fight them, because all the bullets were already used up by the Ukraine. Does that scare you? Because it should. Not because I'm trying to fearmonger you. I'm asking you to think of the consequences of what we have done. I want you to think about the consequences of not being prepared, of not thinking this through. I want you to be appreciative of the fact that we need to change our policies with a quickness. And politicians on the left, the right, in between, libertarians, we got to give up this Pollyanna point of view that says, oh, but it'll be okay. No, it's not. Nothing ever improves for the better because you didn't do anything. It doesn't happen. You have a steak, raw piece of steak. You put it out on a table. It doesn't instantly become a prime rib. It rots away. You have to do something. You have to be involved. You have to make it better. It's not just naturally going to happen. That's just a Pollyanna point of view. It's it's an overly simplified view of politics, and that's what we have running our country right now with the Biden-Harris administration, with the progressive ideology. They have this simplistic idea that, well, if we just support whoever is the smallest group in the battle, they're the good guys. Everyone else is bad guys. And if we just support them and give them our hugs, they're going to be okay. That's stupid. That is a stupid way of thinking of things. Let me look at the comments here. By the way, I'm paying attention to comments. Let's see. Mike Bowie had mentioned that the ideology with the bulletproof vest is like Obamacare, exempting companies. Dow says he sees... I don't know. The cops aren't coming for me today yet. We'll see. Dow says, I see what Jason means. As a member of the journalist class, should mean you get that you are exempt. Well, that's if you qualify to be a journalist under the rules of the left. And the left only recognizes those who talk about approved messages. It's kind of like with YouTube. YouTube, you see it in your feeds today. If you go into your feed right now, you're going to see a lot more commercials and, you're going to see ads for videos of commercials, and you're going to see a lot more small news stations that are going to be pushing left-leaning news media. You're not going to see more people like me. You're not going to hear more of the local, regional, even international, smaller news media, individuals who've been doing this for decades that actually tell you about the news. You're not hearing that. They have isolated that. So we're not, even though I am a recognized member of the press, this may surprise people on the left or in people who are new to the show, I am a recognized member of the press. I am a political commentator that does journalistic articles from time to time. That's a fact. And my credentials are impeccable, and yet YouTube will not recognize me. Google does not recognize me. The news media, my colleagues in the news industry, have recognized me for years. Elected officials have recognized me for years. But they don't like it because I didn't go to the right school, and I'm not backed by the right institutions. Therefore, I'm unapproved, and unapproved equals non-existent in their mind. And therefore, even if they allow news media to be able to wear a bulletproof vest, unapproved news media don't get that same right, which is stupid, insane, and truly, it's not the purview of the government to decide what is or is not news. That's, again, the Disinformation Governance Board. We're going back to that, where it's 1984. The government gets to decide what is or is not approved as the message, as the news. They're determining it for you. And even now, the news isn't so much telling you what's happening. They're telling you how to feel about what they told you you're going to obey. Dow goes on to say China will start with Taiwan, and then they'll expand possibly into Alaska, and they definitely are already in Africa based on their economic deals with all of everything, the green energy, the heavy metals, lithium and such. They've already made the agreements. All of that is going through China. They've already put their roots into Africa. Part of the reason why we're seeing so many conflicts in Africa today, part of it's because of ISIS and Al-Qaeda released by Joe Biden into Africa, but it's also partially because of the communist influence trying to overthrow governments there. So these are several factors that are coming together. And I wanted to point that out and highlight that we are out of bullets. A smart president would start saying, America needs to make more bullets. We need to build up our infrastructure to protect the American people and America's interests in the world. That if we're trying to support the Ukraine, well, we can't support Ukraine and Israel and South Korea or Japan. We can't do that all at once because we don't have the bullets, we don't have the weapons. And if they are in threat, and if we can't do that for them, we can't protect the American homeland. By the way, if you didn't realize it, ammo prices are about to surge. It's actually something that was breaking today. Let me see if I have that article. Hang on. Yep, here it is. The rest of the world has recognized how much of a problem this is, because as you can see here, and I believe this is from Newsweek, and they're telling you, ammo prices are going to go up. This is how internationally recognized the problem is. That ammo prices are now set. They're predicting there is going to be a surge in the price of ammo, which has already surged for years. We've been seeing a creeping up the price of ammo over the last 5 years, at least more around the last 10 to 15. And we're going to see a spike again, substantially. Why is it substantially going to increase? Because the world has recognized America can't defend American interests or the American people or the American allies, which means it's free game. Russia used up all of our defenses and our offense. They're winning by just standing there. It's a war of attrition, and they're winning. And China hasn't even started its fight yet. Gee, if it's a matter of attrition and Russia is already winning the attrition, what happens when the next player gets involved? Whether that's Iran or whether that's China, it doesn't matter. People say, well, you're spinning fear. It's not fear. The price of ammo wouldn't be going up if it were just about fear. We would not be getting reports from the Ukraine, which are suppressed, saying there's not enough ammo. What you're not seeing, MSNBC is not talking about this. ABC News, CBS, they don't want to talk about the fact that there aren't enough bullets to stop Russia, that the Ukraine is losing because in a war of attrition, they are the loser. Russia has the weapons, they have the ammo, and China and North Korea are churning out more and more drones, more and more weapons, and they're sending them. They're prepared. They have been militarizing. They're in the logistics phase. They're amping up their ability to commit war. And what are we doing here? We're telling people that if you don't agree, well, then you're a socialist. You're a white nationalist. And if you don't believe that hugs are the answer, you're a white nationalist. If you don't support the people who are fighting against us, well, then you're a terrorist. You're the bad guy. Think about that. We are doing the exact opposite of what we need to do. You, as an individual, we already said since February of 2022. You can check this out for yourself. February 2022. And since we have told you, stockpile food. Just buy 10% more every time you go to the store. Buy more rice, more wheat, more flour. Buy canned foods, things that will last longer. We've been saying that since February of 2022. You absolutely would have saved a ton of money if you listened to us back in February of 2022 and started just buying 10% more food every time you went to the store. You'd saved tons of money if you listened to us. And we're telling you, it's not over. You got to keep stockpiling at least until 2025. 10% more every time you go to the store. Not panic buying. Don't freak out. Just 10% more. And buy more wheat, more flour, more pasta, more canned foods, things that will last longer. Because you're going to need it. It's going to get very hard to get these things, to get these foods, and it's going to become very expensive. We're seeing the inflation of electricity and energy prices. And the answer from the left is, oh, well, then you just don't get to be on the internet. You don't get to charge your electric vehicle because the government will just turn it off. They'll just have the kill switch. You just don't get to use the electricity. They're going to micromanage your life. It's not an answer. And that doesn't help as we get into more and more conflicts around the world. Now there's less ammo. Done. Take the hint. Prepare yourselves, folks. You don't have to agree with me. You don't have to think I'm not brilliant. This is what's there. I'm just looking at a larger set of information than the average American. I'm not listening to a minute and a half summary of some approved news channel that have a political agenda at the end of the day. I'm looking at international news, and I'm putting that together with international news for years now, decades now, and saying, hey, this is the most logical outcome. Be prepared. So, let's see. Dow says that China is ramping up over some sort of internal purging of mass scale. I think they're looking for a war. They're not just going to purge internally, they're going to go for an all-out war. Dow says, regardless of who wins, matter of fact, as we speak, there is a growing conflict between the Philippines and China in their sea, in Southeast Sea, as we speak. So it is escalating as we speak. Dow goes on to say, regardless of who wins, Xi or his opposition, they'll need an external conflict to unite the populace to distract from the internal strife. Yeah, okay, I'm following you. Used to be you could get, it used to be that you get 500 rounds of 22 long rifle ammunition for $15. That was in the 1990s. Then the government started to buy large amounts of ammunition and the supply, and it's been going to the Department of Homeland Security, and the price has been skyrocketing. Mike Bowie says, could wasting our military stockpiles in Ukraine be by design to weaken us? I don't think, let me address that, Mike Bowie. I don't think that Russia did this on purpose, that they said, oh, we're going to fight and then we'll use up all of the ammunition in Europe and in the United States, and then we can just barn stomp everywhere in the world we want to. No, I don't think that's what was their intention. I think, though, that generals are smart people. They're not stupid. Whether I agree with them or not, whether you like how they do things, that's a separate question. But they're not stupid. That's why they got to the job they have. And they're looking at the data, and they're not just looking at the data of the battle today. They're projecting forward. They're wargaming this. They are looking forward to resource supplies, logistics, renewable source resources that they have. They're looking at all of the aspects, and they have been very acutely paying attention to the amount of ammunition that is coming from the United States, that's coming from Europe and from the United Kingdom going into Ukraine. They've looked at the number of factories. They've looked at the change in the laws and what is the maximum output for this. Now you say, Mike, that's just too much information. How could they possibly collate that? You're right. A general by themselves, absolutely not. A company of the military, 60 people, no, too much. These are governments we're talking about. These are the resources of governments feeding in all this data. What is the maximum output of ammunition by the United States at any given time based on the trends, the resources, the laws that they have in place, the number of factories that they have reduced themselves to? Remember, we've been reducing the number of factories in the United States that produce ammunition, that produce firearms. So they've been paying attention. They have that data, just like we have that data on other countries. So we know what they can make. They know how much we can make. The problem is they're building up and we're reducing. As an example, the United States military is downsizing. We're going into a smaller Navy. We're cutting the size of the United States Navy by about half. China is doubling the size of its Navy. And I've heard people give the argument before, well, yeah, but the Navy for China, they're not very good. They may not be. But you know what? If I got 10 guys with a slingshot against one guy with a longsword, guess what? I don't need all 10 of those guys to be brilliant or the best ever. They'll win. They have more ammo to throw. They can overwhelm that one individual. It happens all the time. You have enough people. It only takes one torpedo to take, well, not correct. It only takes a couple of torpedoes to take down a ship. If I have 50 smaller, not as great ships, but I'm able to fire 50 torpedoes at one aircraft carrier all at once, yeah, the aircraft carrier is far better. But if I got 50 torpedoes going at them, they're not likely to miss. I'm going to sink that aircraft carrier. It's an oversimplification of the idea, but it's accurate. That's what we are facing now. And they have taken advantage of, oh, we thought they could produce more weapons. They can't. What does that mean to all our other plans? What happens to Russia in their plan to take over Estonia, or to take over Poland, to take over Moldova? These other countries that most Americans have never heard of, don't know anything about, that we haven't been hearing our news media talk about, because Poland has been paying attention. And the Polish reaction has been to militarize. They have built up their defenses in terms of their national border. They have been militarizing. They have been training. They're stockpiling weapons, and they're warning all their neighbors to do the same damn thing. Big difference. Poland gets it. Poland understands the nature of the threat. So does Lithuania, Estonia, and Latvia. They understand the nature of the threat. Sweden understands the nature of the threat. They are preparing because they saw the same math that Russia sees. We don't have enough bullets to fight. And if the fight expands beyond where it is right now, we can't fight. Not effectively. That's a problem. That's a massive problem. If the leader of the world, the country that every nation in the world has been looking to as a police force, as a moderating figure to keep the crazy in the world at a lower level, if we can't stop the crazy, what will stop the crazy? Nothing. All right, so I wanted to point that out for people and take whatever advice you can out of that. And by the way, you should be buying more ammo because the prices are going up. Or, you might want to go and buy some ammo stocks. Could be of interest. Could be useful. And by the way, the small ammo companies need your support anyway to be able to just keep their supplies going. So it's not just an investment. It's a lot of things. Hang on one second here. All right, so I think this is really, really important to understand what is the status of the world and how it's going to affect you. We are running out of allies, and our enemies are, they're circling us right now. They are getting ramped up. Turkey is a kind of, sort of, sometimes ally to the United States. Sometimes. At the moment, they're not. And they are preparing, and they're telling us it's about to get bad. See, Turkey is on the same side as most of the Middle East. They want to denounce Israel. They want to see Israel destroyed. They're being very clear about that. So on Friday, when the United States said, no, we don't believe in a one-sided ceasefire. We want Hamas to give up the hostages and to end hostilities, to ceasefire, as well as Israel. If we can get that, then we'll support a ceasefire. But just telling Israel, stop fighting, that's not an answer. Because that doesn't get the Americans back home. That doesn't convince us that we're going to be safe. Turkey didn't like that answer. And by the way, this is in the UN. So when the United States said, no, we're not going to force, first of all, you can't force a nation to ceasefire. You can't. You can't force a ceasefire, period. But the UN wanted to say, well, we're going to try and force Israel to do it anyway. And because it's the UN, the United States said, no, that's stupid. So that meant out of 13 nations, the United States said no. The United Kingdom said, we're not even paying attention to this. They didn't vote. They abstained. 13 other countries said, absolutely, Israel's a bad guy. And because the United States said, no, you're out of your mind, it's done. Did not happen. Which is why you're not seeing the UN putting a ceasefire onto or trying to force a ceasefire on Israel. Mind you, again, Israel, not Hamas, not Iran, just Israel. Because that happened, Turkey is pissed off because Turkey agrees with, well, basically Saudi Arabia, kind of sort of Iran, and they hate Israel. So Turkey had this to say, and I believe I have the, not only will you hear the audio, you should be able to see the words themselves. So let's take a look at this.
Böyle adil bir dünya olur mu?
Can there be such a just world? Can the world be just if there is no ceasefire unilaterally by Israel? To give it full context, that's what he's talking about. He's talking about the vote on Friday, the United States not supporting a unilateral ceasefire by Israel. Can the world be just if the United States will not support this?
Ama biz ne diyoruz? Aslında adil bir dünya.
A just world can exist. A world where the world forces Israel to a unilateral ceasefire. A world where Israel is beholden to other countries, in particular countries that hate it. Can that world exist? Can a progressive or socialist ideology have control of countries against their will and against their best interest? That's what he is asking. This is the president of Turkey, Erdogan. This is what he is saying to his people. And he says, yes, a just world is possible, but not with America. I want you to understand. Now, it's only a minute and a half in his conversation. He's pissed off about the vote. But the thing that is important in this is he is telling his people, he is telling Russia, he's telling China, he's telling the Middle East, he's telling the world, America is the problem. That he is identifying America as a problem for a just world. He is essentially saying he's taking the side of China, he's taking the side of Russia, he's taking the side of Iran. He is against the United States. He's not our ally. That he is happy to see America disappear. And guess what? That doesn't happen without a war. You can't just disappear America. Even if we had a civil war, America doesn't end. There may be a smaller United States, there may be a different United States, but there would still be a United States. America wouldn't disappear. He's saying it's got to disappear. This is the very same thing that you are hearing from Harvard, from the University of Pennsylvania. It's the same thing that you're hearing from Cornell University, Cooper Union, MIT. This is what you are hearing from the colleges in the United States, the elites. This is what you are hearing from BLM, the Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow, otherwise known as PLOT. This is what you are hearing from the Democratic Socialists of America. America must cease. They are telling you to your face, if you know where to look. Because this is coming from The Guardian, not MSNBC, not CNN, not CBS, or the New York Times. They're not telling you, they're not showing you the words themselves, because you're supposed to obey. You're not supposed to think. You're not supposed to interpret or understand. And I understand. I've given you 2 sentences. I understand. You will say, Mike, that is a soundbite. It's a minute and a half. You can watch the whole thing yourself. I'm not telling you to accept my determination. I am giving you a series of elements of sources and news for you to make up your mind. I am not a progressive. I'm not going to think this for you. I'm not going to make the answer for you. You have to come up with your own decision. You have to decide for yourself. But I am giving you the key elements that I think are important. The United States has an ammo shortage. Europe has an ammo shortage. The rest of the world knows that, and they have known that longer than you have known that. There is a global food crisis. We are seeing the militarization and organization of China and North Korea, Iran and Russia working together against the United States primarily, Europe and Israel secondarily. We are seeing this happen. It has been happening for some time. At the same time, the United States is indoctrinating its own children to hate itself, to break apart, to become more equity and dehumanize individuals and categorize them and tell them to micromanage their lives. This is important. This is what the world is seeing. And they are drawing their lines. South Africa, Turkey. We are seeing this country after country. They're either becoming more like Italy and Sweden and Argentina and saying they're going to move to the right and they're not going to follow this socialist path, this progressive path that destroys its people and these countries, like we see in Venezuela, where they fall apart before our eyes in just a matter of like less than 5 years. We could go, we're seeing these countries that are saying, no, they're not going to do that. And then we have these countries like Turkey, like Venezuela, that are saying, no, we're going to go down that path. We're going to become more socialist, more progressive. We're going to join these other nations because they're going to win, like South Africa as well. People aren't telling you this because it's terrifying news, but we could stop this. This is not a path that we must walk down. We know. We are seeing this before our eyes. We have seen the militarization. We are seeing the logistics being drawn. We are hearing countries that are saying, America must go. America will not obey. Literally, it is the same thing as what you see when you go to a classroom. The progressive, a professor, the teacher, the authority, the progressive will tell you, you must do what I say. And you're there saying, no. Well, this is the same thing, except Turkey is telling America, you must obey. Because according to equity, on an international level, America, well, they rank the bottom based on an arbitrary ranking of these categories. And Turkey is higher. So Turkey gets to tell America, do what we say. Because Iran and Hamas get to point to America and say, do what we say. Because Russia and China get to point at America and say, do what we say. Why? Because America's the superpower. That means they must be inherently evil because racism only comes from power. And no one has the power of America. So America must be racist according to the socialist ideology, the progressive ideology, since no other nation has the power and the capabilities of the United States. The United States must be inherently evil for no other reason, and everyone else gets to tell America what to do. That's what they've been trying to do to us. It is stupid at its face and in its core. It is evil in its core. But that's why we have Turkey trying to slap America in the face and tell us that they will have a world that is just, but it will also be without America. That's a declaration of war. You may think I'm wrong. You're my audience. You can tell me, Mike, I just don't get that. You've gone too far. Let me play it a little bit more of this. Let's go back. Like I said, it's a minute and a half. This is about the ceasefire. Look, I'm going to take my face out of this. And I want you listen to this and tell me, Mike, I have misunderstood.
Reddedildi. Tek başına. Böyle adalet olur mu? böyle adil bir dünya olur mu? Ama biz ne diyoruz? Aslında adil bir dünya mümkün. Ama Amerika ile değil. Birleşmiş Milletler Güvenlik Konseyi'nden ise zaten bir umudumuz, beklentimiz kalmadı. Görevi küresel barışı ve istikrarı korumak olan Güvenlik Konseyi 7 Ekim'den bu yana İsrail...
Did you see that? The United Nations, who's there to improve peace and stability, Biden, the United States, leads the UN Security Council. We're one of the leading factors. The United States, world leader, we're supposed to be supporting global peace and security. What have the Biden-Harris administration done? Failed at peace and global stability. We have documented it for many years. He's just saying what's already there. And he's saying, we're going to change this. Do you hear him say this? Do you see what he is saying here? That because of the response to a terrorist act, Israel is getting too uppity and America has made the wrong decision. Really? Really? I mean, it's not me. These are his words.
İsrail'i Koruma ve Kollama Konseyi'ne dönüştü. Birleşmiş Milletler Güvenlik Konseyi reforme.
He literally is telling you to remake the UN, to remove the United States, to diminish the United States. Again, I'm not making this up. I don't need to. He's telling you directly, diminish the United States, remove or destroy the United States. This is what he is saying to your face. I'm not making this up. I don't need to. This is a declaration of war. It's terrifying. And the mainstream news media will not tell you that this conversation happened. That Turkey has laid down its line in the sand and has jumped onto the side of China, Iran, North Korea, and Russia. That they are no longer our ally and do not respect us. They do not respect or fear the Biden-Harris administration at all. They are more than willing to come at us, and they are saying it will make the world better. This is like a progressive. Literally, everything he is saying would be the same thing you would hear in a progressive classroom. This is the same kind of argument, the same kind of reasoning, the same kind of thought that you would hear from critical race theory activists. This is what you hear from intersectionality. This is what you hear about race traders like BLM. This is the progressive thought, exactly what you would hear that is said to an individual, except now it's being said to nations. This is what happens with progressivism. This is where it leads you. Mike Bowie says he wouldn't say that if Trump were president. King of the Swamp says, oh, this is 100% a declaration of war. I agree with you both. I agree with you both. And again, this is, I'm going to The Guardian. I'm going to left-leaning news media, internationally credible. I don't need to make this up. This is the information that's out there. It's not the information you're getting in your nightly news summary, because you're not getting the news anymore. Nightly news, whether it's cable news or your local news, you're not getting news anymore. Every single item in the news now, which has already been, it's approved to be on, and they go, what, 30 seconds, 1 minute, a really important big story, minute and a half. If it happens to be breaking news, 3 minutes. If it's local breaking news, 3 minutes. Are you meaning to tell me that you're able to observe? Look at the information we've gone over so far. It's already been 2 hours. I haven't even gotten to the domestic part of the show, talking about domestic news. We're still dealing with the international stuff from this week. And you mean to tell me your nightly news program in 30 seconds has summed up this? The implications? Think about that for a second. the implications of Turkey making a absolute threat against the people of the United States, to say that they want to reform the United Nations, that they want to have a just world without America, the implications of that alone can take hours of conversation. It demands hours of research and understanding. It demands that you have to understand the nature of the global conflict that is going on at this moment. And your nightly news, if they decide that they want to talk to you about it, will spend 30 seconds on it. 30 seconds. And I guarantee you they won't include this quote. I guarantee you they are not going to show you the quote that is on the screen right now. They will not give you any context on the fact that Turkey has just said the world would be better without America. They're not going to tell you that. They should tell you that. It's pretty damn important that they tell you that. If your news media, if they decide to talk about this, they will not mention this. They will not. That's why I had to go to The Guardian. I had to go to another country to get this news. Let's see. We've got a comment from Ed says, they want a world war to take down the United States. We have a weak leadership and a needy military that is barely equipped. You're right. And we're missing our recruitment numbers. The Army, the Navy, and the Air Force all miss their recruitment numbers because no one wants to be part of a touchy-feely, I-feel-good military. No one is joining the Army to become the best chef that you can be, because that's not really your job. Your job's to kill people. The Marine Corps at least is honest about it. What is your job? My job is a rifleman. I go and shoot people. That's what my job in the Marine Corps was, and that's what the job of the Marines is. Go and shoot these guys. That's our job. Nothing fancy about it. Nothing glamorous about it. I'm not telling you that it's right or wrong. That's a different conversation. That's a political conversation. But the job of the Marine Corps? Shoot these people. Because America. Full stop, done. And I can respect that. I don't need touchy-feely people in my Marine Corps. I don't think they should be in the military. The military does not bend to the will of a group of extremes. That's not how a military works. You bend to the military. There's a reason when in the United States, when you join the United States military, you don't have rights. I don't think enough people know this or understand this. When you swear your oath in the United States military, at that second, every right conveyed by the Constitution, the amendments, every law in America cease to exist for you. When you swear an oath, you become subject to the United Code of Military Justice, the UCMJ. You are a product, you are now a subject of the United States military, and they have a separate set of rules and laws to govern every aspect of your life. There's a big difference there. For civilians out there, I'm trying to give you an understanding of the magnitude of the impact of what it is to serve a country. It isn't about you. I don't care how you feel. Your feelings are never in any kind of way a factor of what's going on with the military. You do not exist. You aren't a human being. You don't have rights. You're a tool of the military. That's why you swore an oath, to give up your rights for the country, for the betterment of the average person. And when you leave the military, you get your rights back. You retain the Constitution and all those rights that go with it that you didn't have when you were in the military. Now, I bring that up and I try and emphasize that so that you can understand the difference of what we are seeing today. Oh, we want a military that is touchy-feely, where you have all your individual rights and you're in the military. That's not how the military functions. Not if you want an effective military. Not if you want to win a war. Because people, individuals, do not run at a machine gun. People, individuals, do not get up and march as artillery shells are falling on their head. People do not attack a tank. That's just not what an individual will do, and you really can't tell an individual to go do that. It is rare as hell. We're talking about 0.5% of the population are willing to do that on a natural basis. It's like most people running, very few people will run into a fire. That's why firemen are so few and so far between, because it's very difficult to find someone who will run into a fire. It is not what some individual would normally do. It's rare. And now we are saying, oh, but we should have individuals in the military. No, that's not what the military does. It doesn't want individuals. It can't function with individuals. And because our military is falling apart, because people don't want to be part of it, because either they don't want to be part of an individual in the military, or because they are an individual and they can't be part of the military. For both those reasons, at the same time, we have Turkey is taking advantage of this. And so is Russia, so is China, so is Iran, so is North Korea. It's why the world is militarizing. It's why the price of ammunition is going up. It's why the price of food is increasing. There is a global food shortage that will last until 2025. These things are happening. Whether or not you agree with every conclusion I am making, these things are happening. You may think it has a different outcome at the end of the day, but they are happening. You better make up your mind how you're going to deal with it, because even if I'm only half right, are you prepared? Is the government prepared? Is Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, do you think they're prepared? Because from what I can see, they're not. The progressives at Harvard are not. It says, okay, I did cover that. So let me move forward. So I'm just trying to make sure people understand how crazy this is. I should also mention, wait a minute, let me see. You can hear my puppy in the background. So we're going to get into immigration in just a moment. And yes, there's still the Second Amendment, talking about the Second Amendment in New York State and how that's going to affect the rest of the country. The Second Circuit Court of Appeals and their determination about New York State's decision on when and if you can carry a firearm. We're going to go into some of those details in just a moment. I did want to bring up, and we kind of were talking about that earlier on Friday. Come on, there it is. With the Liberty First Foundation. See, not only do I have my conversation throughout the week with Larry Sharp talking about the various issues that affect everyone and having a debate with progressive and a libertarian, and I'm the conservative. Not only is that what was going on, but every Friday at 9 p.m. there is a live stream where we talk about many of the constitutional issues facing America and how that affects the rest of the world as well as American citizens. And so we were having this conversation Friday, and I happened to bring up something that I thought is kind of interesting. You may or you may not agree with me. And I said, watch it happen. Watch it. I'm saying it now. That's my prediction. Within 5 years, someone is going to try and suggest, and they'll start at the low level, misdemeanors or the
ticket disputes.
ticket disputes.
It'll go to traffic court first. It'll go to traffic court first, where everything's already on video, everything's on photograph. A computer can analyze it and decide whether you were guilty or not. Doesn't give you the benefit of the doubt. It's just going to be, yes, you made the turn illegally. Yes, you went through the light. Yes, you were speeding.
Mm-hmm. They're going to automate it. Okay, so essentially what the discussion at that point is the future of AI. And what is more important about that is the way AI is going to be used by socialists, by progressives, to make decisions for your life. And we're going to see this in our courtrooms very shortly. I am absolutely sure, as I said there, within 5 years, we are going to have court cases that are going to be decided by AI, not judges, AI. That we're going to have an AI judge that is going to have all the CCTV, closed circuit TV, the access to your cell phone, access to any cameras on board on your cars, your GPS data. They're going to be going through all of the information, and they're going to have an entire trial without you. You aren't necessary. You're going to be punished. You're going to get the result, but all of it's going to take place without you. Almost like the secret courts that we have right now. You're going to be notified. Oh, there is a court case against you. It is being adjudicated by server number 3 right now. Server 3 is deciding your case. You have been assigned an electronic AI lawyer, maybe, or the AI judge is going through all the data and all the information through the internet to determine if you're guilty. And then you're going to be punished. And that's going to be it. Because again, you're not a human being. You're not an individual. You are a category, a series of categories with a value determined arbitrarily by some elitist. You don't get to have a lawyer. Humans get lawyers. You're not a human. This is the scary part of socialism. This is the scary part of progressive ideology. The further down the line you go, the more equity that you get. Equity is the never-ending division of a human being into a series of categories and subcategories and then subcategories that are ranked arbitrarily. That is the progressive ideology. That is what happens in socialism. It is dehumanizing, and you are being dehumanized as we speak. And I believe part of that is that, okay, we're going to have AI judges. I truly believe in the next 20 years, you're going to start hearing the progressives talk about, well, there are humans and human rights, yes, and there are rights for non-humans. And once we start talking about that, well, what makes someone human? And they're going to start talking about power and categories and whether you earn your humanity. And I'm not talking like a Starship Troopers, I earned citizenship because I decided to serve in the military. No. Which isn't necessarily a bad thing. And read the book. No, maybe the movie too. Depends on how you interpret it. But I'm talking about Starship Troopers there. Service guarantees citizenship. I'm not necessarily against that. But you're going to start hearing about earning your humanity, verifying your humanity based on certain progressive ideals. And as we have more and more AI that are going to take over more and more aspects of our lives, where you're going to have AI judges, you may or may not have an AI attorney. Human beings are going to be taken out of it. Oh, because we want to be impartial that's what they're going to tell you. We want to be impartial. We want to make sure it's completely fair. It's only based on the evidence. Well, that's not really true because the evidence may not tell you all the details about what caused the situation or what motivated that situation, or how the situation, the outcome of it. That's why we have levels and degrees of laws and punishments. But now we're going to put it all in the hands of an AI. Watch my words, because you're not a human. You don't deserve the right. This is the next wave, I believe, of what we're going to see from the progressive movement. They are already telling people that if you have power, well, then you're evil. The only one who should be, and we have to promote the people without power. This is why they support Hamas. This is why they say America is evil, is because, oh, well, America's powerful, so they must be the bad guy. White people are numerous, well, then they must be the bad guy. It keeps going. You know, you make money, you own a business, you must be the bad guy. It has nothing to do with individual anything. It has nothing to do with you as a human being. They are dehumanizing you. You're just a series of categories that they can then assign a value to based on their ideology and their benefit. And AI will be used in law. I think it will be one of the first applications that will then lead us to this dehumanization and separation of human beings and everything else. And part of that is going to be based on your equity, your ESG, your social credit. It's going to be part of a evaluation of you. Do you earn your humanity, or are you something else? And if you have humanity, then you have rights. But if you have not earned your humanity, if you have not proven to the powers that be that you are human, well, then you have no rights. It's a terrifying thought. Yeah, it's kind of like John Cordisco mentions. It's just like in the movie Animal House, where they're on double secret probation. Same idea. You're right. Happy Life. Hey, Happy Life. It is good to see you. And by the way, it's good to see you as well, John. Happy Life says, I'm from the Bronx. Could you imagine every person with a gun? Yes. Yes, I can. I am from the Bronx. I'm in the Bronx right now. And yeah, there are tens of thousands of people with guns in the Bronx right now, legally and illegally. They have had the guns legally and illegally in the Bronx for decades. What's the problem? Oh my God, the guns. Oh my God, the guns are not a problem. People have had the guns. That's not new. People have had disputes. Gangs have existed in the Bronx longer than I have been alive, 56 years. That's not the problem. So, I don't get the point there, Happy Life. See, that's the justification we hear from progressives. But you should be afraid. You should let this happen. You should let us take care of your category because you can't do it for yourself. Aren't you afraid that there's a bunch of gangs running around with guns in the Bronx? No. Why should I be? They've always had the guns. There's always been the gangs, and I'm not dead. I'm 56 years old. I lived most of my life in the Bronx. What's the problem? But you should be afraid, and you should give us your freedom, your rights, your liberties. You should hand that over to some arbitrary group who do not have a plan to make you safe. They have a plan to make you obey. They have a plan to make you subservient. But they don't have a plan to make you safe because they don't care. Safety is for humans. You're not a human. John mentions it's the oppressor mindset. Exactly. It really is. Now, I know some people will say, Mike, you're in a conspiracy theory here. No. I'm taking the information that is available to us today, and I'm walking down one of the logical conclusions of the evidence. Look at the trends, listen to what they are saying, listening to how they say it. It applies on an international level as it does on a internal level within our nation. It is the same language, and it leads to the same kind of destruction. You may say, Mike, I see a different outcome. I'm not telling you that I have the only outcome. I'm not telling you that I have the perfect answer or that my prediction will be exactly correct. May not. But I am telling you it isn't unlikely. It is not impossible. And it actually is highly probable. If we don't prepare for it, it becomes more and more likely. Because socialists do not see you as an individual. You are a collective. You are just one of many. You are replaceable. You are not unique. You're just a sum of a group of categories that they may or may not like. That's a reality you have to understand if you're going to, for all those younger people who are going into this whole, oh, I love socialism, I love progressivism, I want to be a socialist, a progressivist. Really understand you are giving up your individuality and your humanity to become a category that is under the command of some other arbitrary individual because they say so. You have no true rights and individuality of your own. And this is how it plays out in the various ways throughout our government, like having an AI judge determining trials. It will start with something very simple. It will start with, oh, you have a ticket. Well, just go to the AI and get your ticket resolved. Right, it'll either be guilty and you get a fine or you won't. It'll be real simple. It will save you time. It will make it easy. Except it's also going to dehumanize you. Mark my words, you will hear this within the next 5 years. This is, I understand that it's a difficult concept for a lot of people to take in, that not everyone will agree with this, and a lot of people will say that it sounds almost science fiction. It sounds like something so alien to the way we live right now, and it is. But it isn't something that is outside the scope of what we are going towards. And I believe in looking at progressive ideology, listening to the way they speak, listening to how they describe you, this is where they're going. If you think I'm wrong, I'm happy to hear it. I'm happy to hear your comments. That's why I'm here with you. But if I'm right, you've been warned. Be prepared, because they're going to suppress the hell out of this as we go forward. They are definitely going to only give you one point of view about this, the approved message, the one that says you should obey and be happy, because that's what else would you be? I mean, think about it. Here's an article I found and I thought was really interesting, as an example of what I'm talking about there and some of the bigger issues affecting America right now. Let's talk domestically. Let's talk about, forget about Iran for a moment. Forget about Iran or Hamas. Let's forget about Russia and China. Let's look at the United States. In so much of, we're talking about U.S. illegal immigration policies, or immigration policies, specifically about illegal aliens. I found this interesting because this is coming from the Associated Press. Major changes to U.S. immigration policy are under discussion. What are they and what do they mean? I find this really interesting because this is how the media is really failing in its job. When I read this through, this came out just before the show. And so I was reading through it quickly. I will give it that caveat. So I could be wrong here, but when I read through quickly before the show, I had about half an hour, and I was reading through several articles. And one of the things I noticed is, as they're telling you about the different issues, like humanitarian parole, well, what's the issue? We give too much of it. Everybody is getting the title of humanitarian parole. And it's just a way to allow people into the United States in large numbers. And the numbers are now larger than ever before. What's the answer? Reduce it. You're really not telling me anything there. That's not an answer. That's really not. They go through. This is how it helps people, and it's been used to help people by Republicans and Democrats. It's been very effective, and some people want to reduce it. That's not a discussion. You're not giving me a lot of details here. Go on, and the article goes on to say, how about asylum? How about illegal aliens claiming asylum? Well, the article admits that the number of people who claim asylum has increased. In fact, most illegal aliens claim asylum when they get caught in America. Why? Because it just gives them years upon years to be in America, whether or not their claim goes through, and then they're embedded into the system. It gets harder to get rid of them after the fact. Whether they show up or not is another question on top of it, which this article doesn't really deal with. But it's trying to tell you, yeah, but even though people are abusing the system over and over again, it's this has a purpose, and that's why we have this. What's the solution? Reduce the numbers. Wait a minute, wasn't that the answer for the last thing? Do you have anything more you want to talk about, like specific changes? Like, let's get into the details about how the changes will affect the numbers, or at least what's being promised about how they will affect it. Oh, it'll reduce the numbers. By how much? For which nations? How long does it take? How much does it cost? It reduces the numbers. We've answered it. We've gone through it. And as you go through this whole thing, then they go on to talk about expedited removal. But the thing you notice in each of this is they're not really telling you anything here. This isn't about the changes. This is about saying, do you see why we have illegal immigration and we should have more? Having more illegal immigration is good. This is the Associated Press mixing this together. Okay, they didn't want to have a discussion about illegal immigration changes. They wanted to tell you about illegal immigration, period. To justify that the numbers are too large. It's happening and has been happening. Why are you complaining about something that has been going on under both Democrats and Republicans for decades? That is part of the system, that people are doing this. And they're abusing the system because the system is there and it's not going to change. Well, we could reduce the numbers, yes, but don't change it. We're still going to have these things that will be abused from time to time. They are justifying the abuse of our immigration system, not fixing it. I mean, that's the way I read the article, because they're really not talking about the changes and what they could mean. Because what they could mean is less illegal aliens. That's the answer. I can sum up the entire article from the Associated Press. And their whole thing is, major changes to United States immigration policy are under discussion. What are they? What's the discussion? Reduce the number of illegal aliens. And what could they mean? Less illegal aliens. That's it. I've now summarized their entire article in the same kind of depth that they have provided to the reader. This is the same thing that we get on the nightly news. This is the same approved message. Oh, we could reduce the illegal aliens. Well, that's kind of a bad thing. Okay, next story. Done. Wait a minute. What about the cost? How much do illegal aliens cost now under the system we have as is? How much would it be reduced if we changed aspects of the law? Is that going to be a burden? How long does it take to change that? How much does it cost to make these changes in the law? Is there something specific? Are there exceptions that are being noted or being pointed out? Or are we changing this forever so that there is no more loopholes? There are no more choices. Are there loopholes right now? There's a lot of questions that could be answered by the Associated Press if they actually wanted to have a conversation. They don't. like most of the left-leaning news media, they're not really trying to have a conversation with you. They're indoctrinating you. They're telling you this is what exists and this is how you should feel about it. Period. It's not about your input. It's not about your knowledge. It's your acceptance, your obedience. This is how things are. You're going to have illegal aliens. Well, that's true. No one's going to dispute that. There's no perfect way to stop illegal aliens from entering any nation in the world. I give you that. That's true. But you can reduce the numbers. You can severely and significantly reduce the numbers if you are really trying to. They don't care. They don't want you to try to reduce the numbers. They don't want you to evaluate this. They want you to obey. And I think that's kind of scary because we're seeing that from the mainstream major news. That's coming from the Associated Press. It's not me. Read the article for yourself. They're not telling you about the changes. The answer is it'll reduce the numbers. That's not an answer. That's really, well, let me correct myself. That's an answer. It's a piss poor answer. It really is. But let's talk a little bit about New York City. Because everyone loves New York City. You guys love New York City, right? I love New York City. But that's because I live in New York City. So I have to care. Happy life. You should probably love New York City too. Because you live here right now. And everyone wants to have their home be great. Don't you? Because if you don't, you're going to have a different home. Because if your home is not great, it's not worth being there. So I think it's kind of funny that New York City Mayor Eric Adams, the practical progressive, according to his statement to CNBC News the day after the New York City election, New York City mayoral election, he named himself a practical progressive. New York City Mayor Adams' approval sinks to record low, under fire on several fronts. This is what the Quinnipiac poll is able to find out. Of course he is. Because he dared to say that illegal immigration is actually kind of bad. That it doesn't live up to any of the promises that you have been given. None of the promises you have been told. Oh, illegal aliens do not add to the drain on infrastructure. That's a lie. Illegal aliens bring in new money to a community and help the economy get better. That's a lie. Illegal aliens do not interfere with the jobs of other people, nor do they create crowding in our schools. That's also a lie. How many of these lies you keep hearing? Well, we have to take these people in. That's a lie. And there's plenty of room in America. We have all the space for these people. That's a lie. So we hear all these lies. And because Eric Adams, along with both the old mayor, Lori Lightfoot, and the new mayor of Chicago, and the mayor of Boston, as well as various cities throughout the Southwest and in California, they've all said the same thing. Illegal aliens are destroying their infrastructure. They are going bankrupt. They cannot afford this. And when someone tells you your house is on fire, but won't let you out the house, you don't have a very high opinion of that person now, do you? I mean, does that make a lot of sense? If Eric Adams is telling you that New York City is going to fall apart, he's going to get rid of 5,000 police officers, which automatically, if you do nothing else, if nothing else changes in 2024, 2025, if nothing else changes in the world, if we just do a snapshot, everything else stays the same, the amount of crime increases. Why? Because there's less police officers to stop the crimes. Even if it's the same level of crime, if nothing else changes, if not one criminal decides or person leaning towards crime decides to take any action, there will be more crime because there are less police officers to stop that crime, even if it's at the same level. So the crime rate will increase. The number of victims will increase. This is a guarantee. This is a fact. Why? Because he cannot afford to pay for police officers, to pay for school teachers with illegal aliens at the level they are right now. That level is 140,000 illegal aliens, according to New York State. 140. There are more than 140,000 illegal aliens in New York City. That's a guarantee. You're talking about a couple million people. You're talking about at least 1 million illegal aliens are in New York City alone. Forget about New York State. But they officially say it's 140,000. And that is enough to break New York State, to cost $12 billion, $3 billion a year at this level. And Eric Adams will not say, close the border. Eric Adams will not say New York City is not a sanctuary city, that New York State is not a sanctuary state. Kathy Hochul will not, she refuses to say that, to even consider New York City and New York State not being sanctuary for illegal aliens, even as she is trying to juggle plane rides, shipping these children into different cities, trying to get these migrant workers, these illegal aliens, and trying to ship them into small towns throughout New York State that don't want them and cannot afford them. But yet they won't say, stop the flow. They still have the fire hose wide open. They're still letting more illegal aliens come in. They're still giving them more and more, even though they don't have anything left. That's got to be frustrating. And this is happening in Boston. It's happening in Chicago. It's happening in Kansas. It's happening in Idaho, Texas. It's happening in California. Look at your Democratic strongholds. It's happening in every single one of them with the same ideology and the same reason and the same result. Oh, we have to lower our education standards. We have to lower our policing, our law enforcement. We have to lower the amount of firemen that we have. We have to endanger your life more because we have illegal aliens. Because someone else that you don't know, that you did not vote for, made a decision that those illegal aliens are more important than you. And they are telling you, illegal aliens are more important than you. They come into our country and they get various scales of housing. They can be in four-star hotels for years. They get food. They get money. They get clothing. They get exceptions and fast-tracked into jobs. They get fast-tracked into education and training. You don't. You're the citizen. You're paying for it. You don't get any of these things. This illegal alien did, which makes you a second-class citizen in your own country. It makes them better off. Now, I don't care. I'm not saying that there shouldn't be migrants into America. I think it's a great thing. And we have a wonderful line of people who we should be letting in, who have gone through the process. Fantastic. Let's work with that. Maybe we should have even more of them. Let's have that conversation. But we're talking about illegal aliens. People who cut the line, that actively broke the law on purpose and are abusing the system, looking at the loopholes in the system and jumping right through those loopholes to take advantage of you. And you're being told those people are more important than you. That's really, really got to suck for people. That when you realize that, it's got to be painful. I mean, seriously, that is painful. And the answer to this, the solution that we are being told is the way to fix this. In New York City, which is going bankrupt, that cannot afford the police, that cannot afford teachers, they can't afford the supplies, they don't have the housing. They're taking moms and children and putting them homeless on the streets of New York in the middle of the winter. Yes, today is a warm day. It's 60 degrees. 3 days ago, it was 30. In 3 days from now, it will be 30. Children are in 30-degree weather in New York City, in New York State, because of illegal aliens. Because the politicians said, keep them coming. Don't close the border. And the answer from New York City's city council, who are trying to decide, this is coming from the Weekly Wrap, and their answer is, they're going to increase taxes. They're going to raise revenues. You may hear it as they're going to raise revenue. We need more revenue for New York. We're going to get $1.2 billion in new revenue. Isn't that a great thing? We're going to add more revenue. You know what revenue is for a state or for a city or for the federal government? It's taxes. It's your money. They need to take more money from you. They're going to raise your taxes. And the answer coming from New York City's council is we need more taxes on the average New Yorker, who are some of the most taxed people in the country, if not the world. And we spend more on taxes than everyone else. And that's not the solution. But their answer is they want a tax against congestion. So people who are willing to work in New York State, even though it's expensive, who are going to work in New York City, even though it's incredibly expensive, who are going to afford the $600, $7,000, $8,000 a month to just park your car. That's what people pay to live in an apartment. That's just to park your car. We're talking $20 for every lunch and for every breakfast. We're talking about peanut butter that I can go and get in a dollar store 3 hours outside of New York City. A jar, just a small jar of peanut butter will cost me $2 in New York City. For the same jar, you're going to pay $7.50. $2, $7.50. And they want to increase the tax because you are daring to go to work in New York City. You have to pay more in taxes. You have to be charged more taxes. Do you think that makes a business owner more or less likely to do business in New York? Do you think that's going to create more jobs or less jobs? America is in a recession since 2022. America has been in a recession since August of 2022, according to the classic definition of a recession, before they changed the definition of recession. We've been in recession. New York's in a recession. New York City's in a recession. We have hundreds of thousands of people who have left. We have no one to do the jobs. We don't have enough money. We're spending all our money on illegal aliens, and their answer is increase the taxes. Take more money from the poor people who are too poor to get out. And they think that's going to solve it. Think about it. So I'm a store owner, and I have to pay this congestion tax because the food, a grocery store, you're unloading this week's vegetables or bread or meat or a combination of all of that. And you are unloading it into the store. You're going to get taxed. Who's going to pay for that? Someone has to pay for that extra money. By the way, grocery stores have a 3. If they are lucky, if they are extremely profitable, they have a 3, maybe 5% profit margin. Let me be clear. That means they make 3 cents on every dollar. If they're really good, 5 cents on every dollar that is spent in that store. And you're telling me that with the highest rental prices pretty much in the world, some of the highest tax rates in the world, the highest cost of goods in the world, now you just added a new tax. Where are they coming up with the money? They make 3 cents per dollar, and people have less dollars. Hang on one second. I think my puppy, come here. What are you doing? What? You going outside? My puppy is acting up. Yeah. Okay. My puppy, we've been talking for 2 hours and 45 minutes. And my puppy doesn't want to go outside. It's giving my sister a pain. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take my puppy outside, and then I will come back, and we'll be on Rumble talking about New York City, talking about the Second Circuit Court and its decision on gun control, and we'll go to Rumble to do that. Okay? So give me about half an hour. Give me an hour, and then we'll come back and we'll be doing that, folks. Come on, Con. Where are you, Con? Con, come here. Come here. Are you going to behave now? Yes, I know. I love you too. You're a good boy.